All right, let's start off by saying Barak Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Racha Kodash. All right, welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is GMS Biblical History Chronicles, Wars for Empire. This is something I thought about doing yesterday to illustrate, some of these wars that took place that brought one empire down and set up another empire into power. And I didn't get a chance to do it yesterday. Then I noticed the spirit jumped on Elder Pastor to go over more books in Daniel, and he went through a whole history. I'm almost finished watching the video. I got a few more minutes left, and he was going into the history, certain points in Daniel's 11th chapter, and he was going through some breakdowns, reading, some documentation of, these so-called Edomite scholars that, have put together, the history concerning prophecies in the scriptures. And as Apostle Tara said, that they were pretty accurate. They went off on certain things, but they were pretty accurate. So, like I said yesterday, before I even saw Apostle Tara's video, Spirit was on me to kind of go and get, some of the major wars that happened that brought one empire down and another empire up. That's why it's called Wars for Empire. This is another GMS Biblical History Chronicles. And that's what we're going to be spotlighting in this lesson, and Lord's will, it'll be edifying. Now, before we get into that, I want to read a couple of precepts because, as we know, in different time periods, it's a different spirit, different time periods, different, same people coming back in different times, and there's a time where, certain empires rule and fall, and this is all according to biblical prophecy. Ecclesiastes 9:11 says, I return and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Because if that was the case, you had the Persian Empire, which was the strongest military might in the past. That didn't help them when it came to prophecy and the words of the Lord to be fulfilled. It says, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill. It says, but time and chance happeneth to them all. Because there's a time and a chance for everything to happen. When we read the 3rd chapter of Ecclesiastes, it gives us a time for everything. Time of war, time of peace, so on and so forth. So all of these empires that came and went, they had a certain time to rule. And once that time was up, the Lord cut their time short by having another empire get into power and destroying them. This Ecclesiastes 8:6, because to every purpose there is time and judgment, therefore the misery of man is great upon him. Because there's a time when one empire comes up, and there's a time when another empire goes down. And America is no different. America is Babylon the Great, and America will come down just like any other empire came down. You had empires that were at the peak of their strength, and they were just taken down because it was their time to come down, and it was time for another empire to rule. Because the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and give it to whomsoever he wants. Psalm 75:5. Lift not up your horn on high, speak not with a stiff neck. For promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but the Most High is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another. So the Most High is the one that puts a nation down and the one that sets another nation up. He's the one that gives the bounds that they can't pass. He's the one that gives a time frame or time period where they're going to rule, and after that they will be brought down. which leads us to the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, which is a heavy chapter because this speaks of all the empires from this time, from the Assyrian Empire all the way up until today, where we're at today. And just like the blueprint said, each one of these empires came up and they went down. Then the next empire ruled, so on and so forth, all the way till today, 2020, the year of prophecy, America, which is one of the empires that will rule in Daniel the 7th chapter. So they're about to be taken down. So, you know what, let's start at the 2nd verse. Daniel 7:2. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea, which is the Mediterranean. As we see here, this is the Mediterranean Sea here. Okay. It says, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. And we read that these 4 beasts, when we jump down to the 17th verse, these great beasts which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth, meaning there will be 4 different empires. So these great beasts in Daniel 7 represent great empires with their kings. So then it goes on to say the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. This part here represents the Assyrian Empire, when the Assyrian Empire was set up, because they have something called the griffin, which we've gone over before. There's museums that have this. You could type it in the Assyrian griffin or something like that, and you'll see the head of an Assyrian with the body of an animal. Then it'll have wings on it. That's called the griffin. So the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. So now the wings thereof were plucked, meaning that it was taken out of power. Now there was a decisive battle that took this particular empire, the Assyrian Empire, which was a great, vast, strong empire back then, a force to be reckoned with, and it ruled all in this region here back then. You know, you could type in Assyrian Empire map and you'll see the extent of their empire. So they were a great empire at one time. But then when it came time for them to come down, what happened? The Babylonians, which were the next up in line, were pretty much there, because the Assyrian Empire was coming down and the Babylonian Empire was about to come into place. And what it was the middle Babylonian conquest of the Assyrian Empire, because you had the Babylonians fighting against the Babylonian Empire fighting against the Assyrian Empire, and then you had the Medes that joined battle with helping Babylon to take the Assyrian Empire down. Why? Because it was time for this particular empire to go down. And as you see this map here, it gives you, I believe this green highlighted here in green, this was the extent of the Assyrian Empire. Right? It says the Middle Babylonian conquest of the Assyrian Empire was the last war fought by the Neo-Assyrian Empire between 626 and 609 BC. The multiple failed offensives against the Medes and the Neo-Babylonian Empire ultimately led to the destruction of the Assyrian Empire, which had dominated the ancient Near East since 911 BC. And this is what we're reading here. We're reading the prophecy, we're reading the fulfillment of the prophecy, and we're looking at a map of the different regions that these empires ruled. As you can see here, it's small, but if you type in Assyrian Babylonian wars, this will come up, and you can click on it and look at the map. So this, when this war was fought and they lost, this whole region came into the hands of who? The Babylonian Empire. Why? Because it was their time to rule the earth. Then, as we go back to Daniel 7, let's move this up. It says, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. This represents Nebuchadnezzar, and it represents the Babylonian Empire. All right. And let's see. Now, the Babylonians conquered the Assyrians in the battle that we just read about. All right, this last war that was fought between the Medes and the Babylonians against the Assyrians. So the Babylonians are in power now. So now we go on to the next beast. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear. Now this beast represented the Medo-Persian Empire, which conquered the ancient, or conquered the Babylonian Empire. And the situation that happened here was that the situation that happened there was that pretty much the Babylonian Empire was absolved into the Persian or Medo-Persian Empire because there was no major war that was fought. What happened was, we have an account in the book of Daniel, the 5th chapter, of what took place on how the Babylonian Empire fell and was given into the hand of the Medo-Persian Empire. And we'll read that. Let's read this again. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, which represents the Medo-Persian Empire. And it raised up itself on one side because the Medes came into power first. And then the Babylonians, they ruled jointly, but the Babylonians, the Persians, and the Persians became greater. So they were exalted higher than the Medo-Persian Empire, although the Medo-Persian Empire was first. It says, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth that represented the areas that they conquered. It says, and they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. And that's what happened, because when you look at when you do the research on the Persian wars, people were getting devastated by the Persians, and they did devour much flesh, and anyone that came up against them would be destroyed, and they would start lunacy, to amass an army and try to come and fight and destroy the Persian Empire. But just like it had its rise, it also had its fall. So as we move on to Daniel, the 5th chapter, it says, Daniel 5:24, then was the part of the hand sent unto him, sent from him, and this writing was written. And this was Belshazzar, who was the last Babylonian king. And pretty much what happened, he and his heads and their women, they were having a feast and they were getting drunk, and then he got so bold that he called in for the vessels of the temple, and they started drinking out of the vessels of the temple, and that pissed the Most High off, and that's why he sent this writing, on the wall. And this is the writing that was written, Mini Mini Tekel Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Many, the Most High hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. So they had a time to rule, a time of their beginning, and a time of their end. So on that night, the Most High ended, because it was already prophesied that this first beast was going to fall to make room for what? For the second beast. It says, Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and are found wanting. Paris, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Why? Because it was their time to rule. So the scriptures give us, the different empires and what they would do and how they would rule. And there was nothing that either one of these empires, as great and as vast and as great of an army that they had and powerful of an army that they had, there was nothing that they could do to rule a second longer, because they were given a certain period of time to rule, and then they were taken down. Let's go real quick to the book of Job 14:5. It says, seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. So you can't pass the set date that the Most High has set to destroy you. Just like America, Babylon the Great has a date with destiny. America, Babylon the Great has a date with destiny. And that destiny is that it will be destroyed and it will not be a superpower. And once this superpower goes down, there's not going to be any other superpower to rise up except for Yahweh kingdom, which is our kingdom because we're joint heirs with him. So once the Lord numbers a particular empire, there's nothing that they can do to rule any longer. That's why the scriptures say that these devils, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever and their dwelling places to all generations. Because they really believe in their heart of hearts, they're that proud that they don't ever think they're going down. Because, people back then thought it was impossible for the Persian Empire to go down because of how great, vast, and strong militarily it was and how wealthy it was. But the Lord brought them down. So it says, Paris, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Because remember, the Medes came in, but the Persians ruled the greatest rule. They had the greatest rule because they were the strongest, and it was prophesied that they would be higher than the Medes. And that's why we enters in Cyrus the Great, which was the Persian leader, that really cemented their rule, because it was time for them to rule. So going back to Daniel 7, let's read this again. And behold, another beast is second like to a bear. This is the Medo-Persian Empire. And it raised itself up on one side. And we can read about, it's like, let me not jump the gun. And it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it that represents, between the teeth of it, that represents the regions that they conquered. They conquered towards the west, towards the north, and towards the south. And there were 3 major powers that they took down back then. Right? So now it says, thus unto it arise, devour much flesh, which they did. It says, and after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Now this particular beast, the leopard, represented Alexander the Creep, or the Greek, and the Greek Empire that took over the Medo-Persian Empire. And the decisive battle that took place was the Battle of Issus. It says the Battle of Issus occurred in southern Anatolia in November 333 BC. The invading troops led by Alexander were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Yet they defeated the army personally, led by Darius III of the Achaemenid Persia. The battle was a decisive Macedonian victory, and it marked the beginning of the end of the Persian power. Why? Because it was prophesied that the Persians would go down and the Greeks would come up. Now, when we read in Daniel 7, it doesn't give the name of the empires, but going back into history, we see. And then when you go to Daniel the 8th chapter, which we're going to get, we have an account of what happened when the Greeks were in power and the Medo-Persian Empire was brought down. Because when we jump down to the 20th verse, it says, the ram which thou sawest, which you're going to read about, having 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. And those 2 horns, one came up higher than the other. And the one that came up first was the lowest one, and the one that came up second was the highest one. Because the Persian Empire was greater than the Medes, but they ruled jointly. It says, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. And this goes back to Alexander the Creep, or Alexander the Greek, and the Greek Empire. So when we jump back, Daniel 8:1, and when we read the history, it lines up perfectly with what the scriptures are saying. It says, in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me, Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And we covered this in other lessons. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last, which goes into the Medes and the Persians. It says, I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward. These are the 3 ribs and the teeth. And like I said, they conquered 3 major provinces back then, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. Why? Because it was time for the Medo-Persian Empire to fall and the Greek Empire to rise. That's why this is called wars for empire, because the Lord set up certain wars to take down one empire, set up another. But in the case of the Babylonian Empire, it just fell to the Medes and the Persians, because that's how the Lord chose to do it. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth. So where did Alexander the Great come from? They came from the west. It said, and on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, because he conquered with great speed. To this day, there has not been an act like this committed to where a nation conquered other nations so quickly and so swiftly. It says, and the goat had a notable horn between the eyes, which was Alexander the Great. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against it. He was moved with extreme anger, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. Why? Because prophecy said that they must come down, because this next beast is coming up. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Why? Because the Lord gave authority to the goat, which was the Greek Empire, and they were the next empire to rule. And it was time for the Medo-Persian Empire to fall, just as we're reading in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter. So now when we go here to Greece, I'm jumping the gun again. So let's move Daniel 7 forward. And let's read this again. Daniel 7:6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. And we know by doing the history, which we've gone over many times, those 4 wings represented 4 of his generals, to whom the kingdom, or his kingdom, was parted. Because he had the kingdom together as one, but then when he died, the kingdom was parted amongst his generals, mainly into 4 parts. But you had other generals also that ruled certain regions, but they were not as major as these 4 generals, which was Lysimachus, Cassander, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. And out of the 4, the 2 main ones that scriptures mostly focus on is the Ptolemaic Empire and the Seleucid Empire. Those are the 2 main characters that would make up, the book of Daniel, the 11th chapter, as Elder Apostle Tar was going through the breakdown of some of it in the lesson that he did. So it says, after this I beheld, lo, another like a leopard, which had upon his back, upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, which were the same 4 generals, and dominion was given to it. And they conquered. Why? Because it was time for the Greek Empire to rule and the Medo-Persian Empire to fall, just like the Assyrians had the Assyrian Empire had its rule and its fall. The Babylonian Empire came, took them down, and they ruled. Then we read about the Medo-Persian Empire. When the Babylonian Empire fell, they came into power. Now we're reading about the Greek Empire that came into power, and the Medo-Persian Empire fell, which leads us to the fourth and final beast. It says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And this represents the Roman Empire, which took down the Greek Empire. And you have sources that say that you had a Greco-Roman Empire, because they did rule jointly once the Greek Empire was absorbed into the Roman Empire. Now there was a series of wars called the Macedonian Wars. When you type in Roman Greek Wars, one of the Roman Greek Wars was called the Macedonian Wars. And these Macedonian Wars was where the Roman Empire absorbed the Greek Empire into themselves. This is called Greece in the Roman era. Says Greece in the Roman era described the period of Greek history when ancient Greece was dominated by the Roman Republic. The Roman Empire, 27 BC through AD 1453, commonly referred to as the Byzantine Empire. This is after Jake took over, eventually, in process of time. After the fall of the Flavian dynasty, that Jake came in there. It says, after about AD 395, the Roman era of Greek history began with the Corinthian defeat in the Battle of Corinth in 146 BC. However, before the Achaean War, the Roman Republic had been steadily gaining control of mainland Greece by defeating the kingdom of Macedon in a series of conflicts known as the Macedonian Wars. The Fourth Macedonian War ended at the Battle of Pydna in 146 BC and defeat of the Macedonian royal pretender Andriscus. The definitive Roman occupation of the Greek world was established after the Battle of Actium, 31 BC, in which Augustus defeated Cleopatra VII, the Greek Ptolemaeus, queen of Egypt, and the Roman general Mark Antony, and afterwards conquered Alexandria, 30 BC, the last great city of the Hellenistic Greece. The Roman era of Greek history continued with Emperor Constantine the Great's adoption of Byzantium as Nova Roma, or New Rome, the capital city of the Roman Empire. In AD 330, the city was renamed Constantinople after the Roman Byzantine Empire was a generally Greek-speaking polity. So when Ptolemy, you had, I believe it was Ptolemy the 13th, which was her brother Cleopatra VII, if I'm not mistaken on that history. It's been a while. When they got conquered, that was the total absolvance. But you also had times going back to here to 146 BC where Rome started taking over Greece. Why? Because it was time for the Greek Empire to come down, and it was time for the Roman Empire to rule. It says the Greek peninsula fell under Roman rule in 146 BC after the Battle of Corinth, when Macedonia became a Roman province. At this time, southern Greece also came under Roman hegemony. However, some Greek polis remained partly autonomous and avoided direct Roman taxation. All right. So we read up here how the Roman Empire, pretty much at the Battle of Actium, 31 BC, is when they totally conquered, Greece, into the Roman Empire. Because remember, at this battle here, Battle of Corinth, there was still certain provinces that were still ruled on their own until Rome took them all down. So this is a history. And this history matches perfectly with the scriptures. And as the Lord said, these different empires that ruled, one would come in and another one would come down. And there were certain accounts in history of certain battles that helped to bring these empires down. Now in the case of the Babylonian Empire, it was just absorbed right into the Medo-Persian Empire. All right, so now verse 8, it says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. So who is this little horn that came up among these 10 horns? That's dealing with America. Because America would be the healing of that wound, that deadly wound that would be healed. And when they were healed, that was during what? That was during the Renaissance period, into where Esau started getting back foothold on the earth to do what? To set up his empire again, the revival of the ancient Roman Empire through America and its allies. And what we're seeing now is the empire of America, ruling through the earth, that stemmed from this little horn. And it stemmed out of the 7 heads of these major European, so-called European empires, and America became the 8th head of those 7 heads. So this is the rising of America out of the ruins, so to speak, of the ancient Roman Empire. During the time of the Byzantine Empire. You brothers know about the history. It says, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And this goes back into history of the wars that America had with Britain, Spain, and France. Because Britain, Spain, and France had footholds in America. That's where you have English names of states, you have Spanish names of states, and you have French names of states and regions. Because this was held by those 3 prior to America really taking a conquering over them. It says, and behold, in his horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. So, and that's America, to always talking shit, because they have the military power. Because remember, it said that they had great power. They were strong exceedingly. The Roman Empire was, and that power was transferred, so to speak, into America when America became a superpower. So now what we're reading is the ending of this 4th beast. Daniel 7:9. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, meaning what? So these empires that were ruled, fell, and now all of them are about to be taken out. It says, and the Ancient of Days did sit. So Daniel actually saw all of these kingdoms falling. He saw them rise into power. He saw them fall. But he didn't really understand what it meant back then. Whose garment was white as snow. This is dealing with the Most High, the Ancient of Days. And the hair of his head like the pure wool, which shows that he's a so-called black man. So you could understand. His throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. This represents the chariots. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, which are the angels, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, which are the angels. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. Why? Because now we see in what? We see in the prophecies speaking on these things that we're reading about. Let's go real quick to Habakkuk chapter 2. And 1, it says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision, and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. So when the Lord gave Daniel these visions, of these different visions, they had a time when they were going to be actually accomplished. You had the beginning of it and the ending of it. And the scriptures say that better is the ending of a thing than the beginning. So it says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak. So now we're witnessing the end of the American Empire falling, according to prophecy, which we're reading in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter. It says, and not lie. Why? Because whatever the Lord sent his word to do is what's going to be accomplished. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry, because at one time it seemed like it was taking a while. But now since the YouTube and the web was created, now the word is out throughout the 4 corners of the earth. Now things are moving faster. because the word of the Lord has taken hold of the whole world. It's gone global. So now the prophecies are speaking loud and clear, and it's making this devil's kingdom fall even that much quicker. It says, I beheld then because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, which is America. I beheld even to the beast was slain and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame, because this place is destined for thermonuclear destruction. That is the great judgment that's going to take hold of this place. It started off with what? In 2 Thessalonians, the second chapter, with the revealing. Now that the revelations have been brought out and who the wicked is, so on and so forth, by the mouth of Yahweh Bashar Shai's prophets, now it's time for the Lord to bring the physical judgment, which is going to be by way of fire. That's going to be brought here by way of those nuclear missiles and the fire from the lasers of the chariots. As concerning the rest of the beasts, this is dealing with the other nations. They had their dominion taken away, because they will lose their power, yet their lives were prolonged for a season in time. Why? Because in the process of time, they're going to be set back up amongst themselves and govern among themselves, but they will have to still be tributary to us, and they will still have to keep the law, statutes, and commandments in the kingdom of heaven, because it's going to be a kingdom of righteousness. There's not going to be no lawlessness. There's not, after these Edomites serve their captivity, they're going to be destroyed. So there's not going to be any more Edomites set up as a nation to try to bring forth all of this debauchery and wickedness on the planet ever again. It says, I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, which is Yahushai, came with the clouds of heaven, because this is how Yahushai is coming to America to destroy this place, and then will be presented back before the Lord. And came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him, because right now, what we're waiting for is we're waiting for this place to go down so that Yahushai can get his kingdom. And then we can be joint heirs with him. Because he did the footwork. He went on the cross. He shed his blood. He did what he was supposed to do. He's sitting on the right-hand side of the Most High. The Most High gave him authority over everything. But the world has not witnessed him receiving everything yet. And this is what we're waiting for. Because when our Lord and Savior, Yahushai, receives his kingdom, then we can be joint heirs with him. He received it, but he hasn't gotten a hold of it yet. That's why he's sitting on the right hand of the Most High. The Lord said, sit on my right hand till I make thine enemies thy footstool. This is Hebrews chapter 2, verse 8. Thou hast put all things in subjection under his feet. For in that he put all in subjection under him, he left nothing that is not put under him. But now we see not yet all things put under him. Yeah, because we haven't witnessed it physically on the earth yet, but we're about to witness it. But we see Yahushai, who was made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of the Most High, should taste death for every man, for every Israelite man. So we don't see everything put under his feet yet, but that's what we're waiting for. So going back to Daniel 7:13, I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. So this is when he is about to receive. So Daniel actually saw Yahushai receiving his kingdom, the consolation, his prize. And came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. And this is what we're waiting for. And this will be when this devil is put down. So this kingdom must go down in order for Yahushua's kingdom to arise, and it will. And you see it falling. You see it falling apart. It says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the vision of my head troubled me. Yeah, because it was so devastating. It was, so surreal. I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Yeah, so we're waiting for the Heavenly Father Yahweh to physically give Yahushai, the kingdom. so that we can rule. And then the fun begins. It says, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of their horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. So he wanted to know the understanding of this fourth beast, because he saw in the vision that after one beast fell, another beast came in. When this fourth beast came into power, he saw this fourth beast fallen, and he saw Yahweh's kingdom being set up. So he wanted to know about that, because he wanted to know when Yahweh's kingdom was going to be set up. Did not the disciples who became apostles ask Yahweh, Lord, will thou at this time restore again the kingdom to Israel? So that's what the prophets wanted to know. First Peter says that they wanted to know when the Lord would suffer and the consolation that should come afterwards, in so many words. It says, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. And you see, America did that. She came against the saints of the Lord. First, the so-called northern kingdom, or the northern kingdom. And second of all, when they brought the southern kingdom here, they made war against the saints of the Lord. Because how do you think they got America? By taking down Gad, Reuben, Issachar. And how do you think they got this side of the world? By taking down all the rest of the tribes that were from Canada all the way down to South America. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Yeah, because there is a reward coming. You know, there's going to be there's going to be justice. There's going to be, a reckoning for what was done to us. Remember, when we read the scriptures speak about what? The controversy of Zion. For what these nations did, the Lord is going to judge them. It says, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth. And he's telling him that it's going to be a kingdom. See? The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which that was what? The Roman Empire. But what happened to the Roman Empire? The Roman Empire fell because it was wounded, as it were to death, for a period of 1,000 years. Then it came back into power. And now you see it flourishing across the planet through America, which is that little horn, which is that eighth head, which is the revival of the ancient Roman Empire with her allies. And now we're witnessing the downfall of this place. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all the kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, because the ancient Roman Empire did not devour the whole earth back then. But they did this time, because now they have the whole earth. And that fully cements the scripture, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Because all other nations never had control of the whole earth, like America does. It says, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And that's what they're doing. They're following after the manner of the ancient Roman Empire. And the 10 horns out of the kingdoms are 10 kings, which represent the European Union, that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, which is America, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, which we spoke about, the 3 wars that America fought with these European nations here in America. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. We see that happening. And think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until the time and times and the dividing of times. So they were given a certain time to rule, and now their time is up. That's why when they started to fall, what happened? The nation of Israel started to rise, because since the late 60s into the 70s, you see Jake started to wake up and started to put back on, the sinews and the flesh and all of that, until today. It's so the word has grown so much that you have people that are celebrities and politicians and different so-called higher ups that know about this. It says, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. Yeah, because this this empire is going to be taken down by Yahushai. You know, World War III will be fought after the Mark of the Beast is implemented, and then Yahushua will come, and that'll be the last and final war on the planet, where Michael, Yahushua, Michael, and the angels are going to fight against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels, which is Esau and the other nations, because the other nations are going to be joined battle. They're going to fight against each other, then they're going to stop, and they're going to try to fight against the Lord, and then the Lord is going to eviscerate them and set his kingdom up. It says, and the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much trouble me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. Yeah, because it was devastating what he saw. You know, that's why when the prophets saw certain visions, they got sick, because it was so vivid, you know, and it was horrible. That's why some of them said, who shall deliver me in those days? So we're living in a time of the waning years of the final empire that would rule on the planet Earth before Yahushua's return, which is Esau. Scriptures say that Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So Esau would be ruling in the final kingdom before Yahushua comes back, because Isaiah the 34th chapter and Isaiah the 63rd chapter says when the Lord comes back, he's coming back to deal with who? Esau. You know, the Edomites, the Idumeans, because they would be in power. So we're at that time where this empire is going to go down and the kingdom of heaven is going to be established. So with that, you know, I pray that you brothers have been edified. Until the next time I say, Shalom. That shall arise, and another shall arise after them, which is America, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, which we spoke about, the 3 wars that America fought with these European nations here in America. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. We see that happening, and think to change times